Three, two, one. Welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the deferred sales trust, is an amazing way for you to exit highly appreciated cryptocurrency businesses, real estate, eliminate the need for the 1031 exchange. You can create and preserve more wealth, or help your clients, friends, and family do the same. Hey, we're also streaming on Expert CRE Secrets podcast as well. So we appreciate all the YouTube and podcast listeners listening to us there. For those who don't know me, my name is Brett Swartz, and I'm the founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions, and as well an expert in commercial real estate. And we each week or each day, we're bringing on amazing guests to speak about their expertise, whether that be in real estate or business, cryptocurrency, or wealth management. And today's guest is no exception. He is, first of all, a 3-time Ironman finisher. Pretty sweet. Property management, virtual assistant staffing expert. He's CEO and co-founder of an amazing company that we're going to talk about here in a second. But really the biggest thing we're going to be focusing on is how to turn your business around from chaos to clarity, and how to level up, delegate, and how to fulfill your mission with your business by bringing on amazing staff. Please welcome to the show with me, Pete Neubig. Pete, how you doing?
Brett, man, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited for this.
Absolutely. And for our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us a little more about your story and your current focus?
Yeah. So I'm originally from New York, moved to Texas, Houston, Texas, back in 1995 for a job opportunity. I was an IT guy for about 25 years. I started buying properties in the early 2000s, and I bought so many properties that I didn't know how to manage them. So I looked for a management company, found out that there really weren't too many. I thought I actually created a new space for single family property management, started my own firm, realized there was a lot of individuals that are actually doing that, joined a group called NARPM, National Association of Residential Property Managers. There's a group for everything out there these days. Ended up building my business from, we call it units, doors, from 0 single family homes to over 1,000. I went to 3 markets, and then I sold my business. And like we talked in the green room, could have used your assistance about 3 years ago. And we could talk a little bit more about, what happened after I sold as far as tax implications, if you like.
Absolutely. We'll geek out about some tax stuff. New York and Taxifornia and New York are some of the hardest hit ones. We'll talk about that. It's a little teaser there for the future of the show. But before we go there, Pete, I want to take one other step back. I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have been given to us to be a blessing and help to others. Some people call them strengths, some people call them superpowers. So I want you to go back to your earlier days. Maybe it's high school, maybe it's college. What are the 1 or 2 gifts that you believe you were given, and how does that help how you help and bless people today?
Yeah. So my gift is not super sexy. I am a process king. I can flow chart almost anything, and I love processes and systems. And I have the unique ability to take over the whiteboard, drill down a process, and able to take out all the extra stuff and automate and make it super simple and streamlined. As a matter of fact, for those of you watching, I literally have a Process King. Somebody gave me, I can't see it. Too bad. But somebody actually made me a Process King plaque. So I am the self-proclaimed Process King. That's my unique ability.
Excellent. And that's exactly why we want to have you on the show. And that's exactly what we're talking about this topic right now. Turn your business around from chaos to clarity. So we're going to dive into Pete's expertise here. So Pete, what's the number one secret to turning around your business from chaos to clarity?
Yeah. So Brett, I looked at like a lot of your listeners, their brokerages, their insurance agencies. There's a lot of people owning small to mid-sized business. And the number one key really is team, right? Without the right team, you're not going to be able to step away from your business. And so a couple of steps real quick on that is, if you do not have core values, you do not have culture. You do have core values and culture. It's just that your team and it's not yours. So core values and culture need to be pushed down, not bubbled up, so to speak. Once you know your core values, you can hire the right person in your organization. But then the next challenge is, if you don't have job roles well-defined, like for example, early on, my job role was answer phones, all other duties assigned by management. That's a terrible job role. And I don't know what the personality type is to fit that job role. So the more defined you get on your job role, You can then determine the personality type for that job role and then hire the right person in the right seat based on personality profile. The last piece to hiring a great team is each job role in your organization should have a key performance indicator or a KPI. And each job role should have 1 to 3 KPIs. And this is how they're rowing in the right direction. So how do you know that how do they know they're doing a good job if there's no scorecard, right? Back when I took Little League or when we played sports, they used to do this thing where they kept score. Not sure they do that these days, but we keep score, and the scorecard tells you if you're winning or losing. If you know clearly what that job role should be doing to be successful, and you know all the requirements to do that job role, and you have the right personality and the right person, then you're going to be pretty successful. So that's kind of the first line of defense. The next
line, let me go through that real fast. So the number one secret is the team. It is all about the team. And the key part of that is having core values and a culture that is led from leadership top down. Yep. And the second part of that is getting job roles clearly defined. Yep. And the next part of that is of those job roles, clearly defining the key performance indicators, probably 1, 2, or 3, and actually keeping score. Is that a fair summary so far, Pete?
Yeah, so far. And the last piece of that is hire based on personality. So you hire based on your core values, but put them in the right seat based on personality. There's a lot of different personality profile exams out there, or tests, if you will. I like DISC. It's super simple. And, if you want to Google DISC, you can learn a little bit about it. And so hire the right person, put them in the right seat, make sure they know what they're doing, keep score. That's the first line of defense of getting the right team in play.
Okay, that makes sense. By the way, keeping score, I wonder if that might be one of the ones that are a little more either challenging and or maybe not as defined for some of our listeners, right? Maybe I could definitely say that for ours, right? Because we do try to do the things that you're talking about, but that keeping score part, what have you found the best secret to keeping score is?
So it's kind of trial and error, unfortunately, Brett, right? So if you're not really sure what the job role is supposed to do, it's hard to keep score. So I just actually gave a presentation on this in Vegas a couple of weeks ago, a whole thing on key performance indicators. So I'll try to make it super quick based on our time. So the main thing is let's say, for example, you need somebody, we do maintenance coordination and property management. That's an easy one, right? And at the end of the day, the job has to get done, right? The work order has to be completed. But there are about 15 steps that need to be done from when a resident puts in a work order till it gets completed. Now, what happens is a lot of people will try to create a key performance indicator for every one of those steps, and that's too much. So the goal is try to create key performance indicators based on what it is that you want the solution to be, or do if you're on a deserted island, if I look at that job role and I see these 1 or 2 or 3 KPIs and they're all green, meaning they're good, I know that job is working well. And so the next question is, you have to easily be able to obtain that, right? You can't just pull a KPI out of the air. You actually have to obtain it, meaning I have to have reporting that I can justify it. So for example, I want to know how, the percentage of work orders that are open over so many days. We know after 15 days, we start getting BBB complaints. We start getting real estate commission complaints. We start getting negative reviews online. And so we want to complete everything within 15 days. So we want to know what's the percentage of work orders that are open over 15 days. And if it's over 7 or 6%, that's red. And we know that we have some issues that we need to solve along down the line. So if I don't have the ability to report on that, I can't make that a KPI. The second thing is if I took all of these steps and KPI'd every one of those steps, I would never get to the final step. And so my team knows, and I know, if my percent of worker orders are less than X percent, 4 or 5%, I'm doing great and I'm happy. Now the question, Brett, most people ask me, they say, all right, Pete, that's great, but how do I know that the team is not circumventing, right? That is not putting in the information? A couple of things. One is trust but verify. So I have reporting that for the other steps, I can look at reporting. It's not a KPI, but it's reporting. For example, in my organization, no work order got completed until the vendor sent us an invoice. That was one thing that people can circumvent. They can close the work order without an invoice. Well, I run a report at the end of the month of all the closed work orders to see if they have an attached invoice. So it takes me about 5-10 minutes to review these things as the manager, to make sure that the KPI is clean. If you hire, like we just said, based on core values, based on the job description, and based on the personality profile, the chances of people circumventing the chances of your team circumventing your KPI, putting junk data in, goes down tremendously. Does it happen from time to time? Sure. And that's where your reporting comes in.
Excellent. Now, do you have a full-time manager who's tracking the work orders, tracking the reporting, and putting all those all together? Like, walk us through the kind of the org chart, if you will, of those that are managing and leading and those that are doing the work, right? Because I've heard there's a track, convert, deliver, collect, right? Those are 4 areas of a business typically, right? And everyone's doing their certain part, but then you have a certain, hey, if you have 4 or 5 time full-time employees, you need, 1 full-time manager. Like, how does that kind of work?
Yeah. So the rule of thumb from all the management books that I've read is like 1 to 7 or 1 to 8. So if you have more than 8 people, you can't manage them effectively. So I will tell you, when I was building Empire Industries, which was my property management firm that we ended up selling back in 2019, I had 35 people working for me. 20 of them were virtual team members in Mexico, and then the other 15 or so were in the US. And I had layers of management, right? I can't manage everybody, even though I'm a control freak. And that's one of the challenges I had early on, was that I wanted to see everything and manage everybody. So you have to manage the managers. The managers have to manage the team. The team has to have the KPIs. Not all the KPIs roll up into the company KPIs, what I call them. I have 3 levels of key performance indicators, right? You have your team, you have your job role or your team, you have your departmental, and then you have the company. And so, for example, percent of work orders, completed within 15 days. That's not something as a company owner I'm looking at. That's something as a maintenance manager I'm looking at. And then the maintenance manager might have maintenance customer satisfaction, and maybe that goes up to the company. The company only has 7 or 10 KPIs that I look at. So again, if I'm the company owner, I'm looking at different KPIs than I am if I'm a company manager, than I am if I'm just a team member. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think it does. It does. And it's interesting. Okay. So the first thing obviously is team, job roles, clarity on who's in the right seat on the bus, right? Based on the personality type, and then having clear KPIs. So you kind of talked about that. What's the next secret? Maybe that's a little bit separate to this, or what would you say the next step is?
So the next secret that people are starting to learn about is, but it's not fully out there, is virtual team members or remote team members, international team members. Basically, it's contractors. Now that the pandemic hit in 2020, more and more people in the United States are working remotely, right? So I had people that I managed in Houston that lived in California, managing properties in Chicago. I mean, it was crazy. Like, they're all over the place. Well, people in the Philippines, Mexico, Central America, Southeast Asia, they've been working for people in Australia, people in the United States for decades. They figured out this whole remote thing years before we did. And just like in Northern California, a property manager might cost $150,000 a year. In Houston, that same person doing the same job will be $50,000 a year. If you can get somebody in Mexico to do it, it's like $20,000 a year, $24,000 a year. So because the cost of living has dramatically increased in the United States. Now it's increased all over the world, but not as much as it has in the United States. So the cost of living in Mexico, for example, a good salary, hourly wage is around $6 to $10 in Mexico. That's a good wage. In the Philippines, it's $4 to $6. So you can hire more people, right? So for every person, and unfortunately, Brett, I had underperformers at Empire. And what I would do is I would get rid of the underperformer, and then I would replace them with 3 people, and my salary requirements would stay the same, right? So now if I have 3 people doing the work of 1, I'm getting more stuff done, more tasks are done, which means that my clients are happier, which means that my churn rate, clients leaving, goes down, which means that my income goes up. And overall, I make more money. The company makes more money. And because of that, I can actually help my US-based employees get more money, give them bonuses, give them better health benefits. And so when I moved off of US-based team for low-level, low enjoyment tasks, and if you're a broker, insurance guy, if you're listening to this stuff, you have a lot of low-level, low enjoyment tasks. you can hire somebody in the Philippines, Mexico, Central America that are bilingual. They have they typically have college degrees, right, or some advanced degree over high school, and they're super grateful for the job, and that's something that we just don't see in the U.S. anymore on those low level jobs, right? For example, my maintenance coordination position, it pays $35,000 a year in the U.S. No one wants it. No one that is good quality and doesn't bring challenges into your organization, right? When I hire somebody for $35,000 a year, the car's always broke down. There's a baby mama drama. There's always something that creates some kind of chaos in my business. When I moved it to Mexico and Philippines, all of a sudden that went away. So you just have higher quality people that are more appreciative of the opportunity. And so when I brought more people in, I had more tasks done. My property managers went from being reactive to proactive, which now meant that I'm building better relationships with my clients and my residents. And so as business owners are listening to this, if you can do that and you can be a proactive business, not only will you retain clients longer, because if you make a mistake and you don't get that communication, you don't have good communication, they're going to leave you. But if you have great communication, you make a mistake, they're not going to leave you. But what we also found was we ended up getting more business. They had more houses that managed by other managers, gave them to us. They have other investors that they hang out with, right? Birds of a feather flock together, we got more referrals. A lot of them didn't know that we bought and sold property because we were brokers as well. We were brokerages and had realtors. And so we started getting more business. So not only did I reduce my overall price per team member or my cost per team member, but I also increased my retention and I also increased my revenue, which
Excellent.
made me, which I went from like single digit profitability to over 20% profitability. Like
it's amazing.
23%.
So virtual assistants overseas, Mexico, Philippines, Maine too, and just realizing that some of these lower level, lower enjoyment type of tasks that that other people are very grateful for, and it's good, great money for them, right? And those other places, and they have ability to strengthen your organization. So you would let one go, hire three, and I wonder, you're hiring those three for the same role and then seeing like who's going to become the best at that role or help each other, and like walk me through that strategy, because that seems kind of interesting. Like we think one for one, but one for three talks about that.
Yeah. So a lot of times when I was hiring somebody, it was because they weren't doing a good job, and because we had a lot of work. For a property management firm, because it's super intense on task based. For us to make money, I have to almost stress my team out, because again, I'm hiring people at a higher rate. When I found that the virtual team members, I could hire more people, which reduced a lot of stress. So I would hire three people thinking that one of them would kind of, not make it. And then I would have two people for the role. And I ended up, my first time is I actually hired four, thinking that I'm going to hire two or three. All four stuck. Two of them stayed in that job role, and the other two, we had a very similar role, and I moved them to lease renewals and I moved them to customer service. So I was able to move them, and they all stay with me for 5 years or so.
Wow. And it's like a team approach. We're like, okay, everybody, we're all focusing on these lease renewals. We're all focusing on these open cycles with, maintenance requests, and everyone's going to attack it all at once. Everyone's going to learn this skill set. And then one of them is going to bubble up who enjoys it more and they do it. Then you take the other one and move them to another area. Is that like,
or I build the business and I have more business coming in, and I need a second and third person.
Yeah.
So when you have,
it's okay. Yeah. Don't worry about it, Pete. The dog's barking or whatever. It's all good. Just talk. You're good, brother.
Okay. So if you think about it, when I hire people, right, I have two or three people that can handle one. The one person might've been a little overwhelmed. So I need 1.5 people, let's just say, but I hired three, but it doesn't cost me any more money. What it allows me to do now is when operations cannot handle the business, your sales team will not sell. Subconsciously, they won't sell. Mm-hmm. They won't. They just won't. So when the team can handle the business, now I can grow, and so now my growth doesn't stunt.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I absolutely love it. It's like a bottleneck, right? And if the
Mhm.
bottleneck's there, and if the deals are coming in, we can't handle that. It's not going to grow. That makes sense. Okay,
Right.
great.
So
So we
before the virtual team members, Brett, like I couldn't hire somebody because if I hired them, I'd be in the red.
right.
Right. So I hired the virtual team members. I'm still in the black, not by much, but I'm still in the black. And then I have capacity to bring in more business.
Makes sense. So okay, so we talked about the KPIs, the culture, the team, job roles. Then we talked about virtual assistants. So that's number two. Is there a third thing out virtual assistants outside of the US? Is there a third thing here that you would say is the number one secret to turning your business around from chaos to clarity?
Hire a team, hire a team, reduce your costs. I think the last thing is so training is a big one. And a lot of people abdicate, right? They don't delegate. They think they're delegating, but they're abdicating, meaning I just hire you, I give you about 13 seconds of my time, and then I want you to go do everything, right? So having systems, processes, and automation built into your business is going to allow the team to do a lot more with less. And so a big part of that though is when you bring somebody in, whether they're US based or overseas, most likely they don't know your system. And most likely they don't know how to do what they're doing, right? I hired on personality and I hired on the type of person, not the experience. Because typically for me, when you have experience, you want to do it your way and not my way. And you can't, it's not Burger King. You can't have it your way. You have to do it my way, so to speak. You can make changes, but you can't just bring in what you want to do. A lot of times, I told you I'm a control freak, Brett, right? But one of the things that you have to do is you have to spend a lot of time upfront training your people. Now, it doesn't have to be you as the business owner. You could have a training department, you could have the manager do it, but you have to spend time training that person. And one of the things that I learned early on is you train them through Zoom, you record the Zoom, whether they're in the States or not. I found out this to be better because both people are at their computers, right? So you can go do things together. You record the Zoom, you train them for an hour, maybe an hour and a half. After an hour and a half, people's brains shut off. They can't think anymore. Their job then from their job at that point is they rewatch the video and they start building their own process manual. And that's the big one. I learned this too late. I had 100-page maintenance manual for my maintenance team. No one ever read it. No one, and more importantly, no one knew how to navigate that manual. And they weren't getting it. They weren't getting it. People have to hear something 7 times before it clicks, before they get it. So if I can train them from the beginning of the process to the end, every day I do an hour. And the second day, I don't start from where I left off. I go back to the beginning. They build a manual, they re-listen. They have to then, they re-listen to it. They have to build a manual and then they hear it again. What happened was by the second week, they're asking much better questions. They're starting to get it. And I would teach them their process first, and then I would teach them not in depth, but I'll teach them how their process affects the rest of the business. So they learned all the processes over time on the business, but we would spend more time on them first. There's a great book called The 1 Minute Manager. I highly recommend it. The 1 Minute Manager talks about spending a lot of time with people. And then when they keep asking you questions after training is over, you redirect them and ask them back, how would you do it? So they finally start learning that way. And then you just manage them. And you have a weekly meeting with your direct reports and you manage them. You have structure and an agenda on how you manage them. You're not just sitting there just talking about what you did last weekend for an hour or for 30 minutes. You have a very refined structure. Structure is 5 minutes. Tell me a good feeling about, tell me a feel good, right? Then you do 5 minutes of key performance indicators. All right. If it's red, we don't ask, why is it red? Why did we not hit it? Because that puts people down to, they get defensive and it's blame, excuse, denial. So you ask, okay, Brett, I see that this KPI has been red for 2 weeks. What can we do to make this KPI green? And what I just did there is I didn't call you out in front of a bunch of people. What I did there is I started making you think about taking ownership, accountability, responsibility, and coming up with a solution.
Pause. This is
Yep.
so good. I got to make sure I can capture this. So this training is very, very important. And what you're saying is you're literally going to do the process with them on a Zoom. You're going to record it and you're going to walk through it for about an hour, hour and a half, or whatever that big, hairy, audacious thing that's in the way of your progress and taking up your time and energy. And you're going to do it with them that first day. And you're going to tell them, rewatch that either immediately, I don't know, maybe and write the manual, write the play by play, write the workflow in your own words, your own way, right? Then the next day you're going to do that same thing again, right? And you're going to do that same thing again every day for like, let's say 5 days, let's just say. And by the second week, they have watched you do it, rewatched the replay and done it like this until eventually they're asking better questions and then they totally get it. Is that a fair summary?
Yep. It may take me 2 weeks to get through a process, but I always start from the beginning and then I make sure we go through the whole process. But yeah, you kind of hit it right at the ballpark there.
God, and I think about like speaking Spanish, right? If you want to teach me Spanish, Pete, it'd be tough unless I'm fully immersed in the process. And you're starting from the basics. So I think where I've got it wrong, and I have some virtual assistants, right, where we'll teach and we'll train, but we're not necessarily starting from the beginning all over again. And just that repetitive part, and then having them rewatch the replay. But I like the part about ownership, about them writing it into their own workflow. So is there you call that a workflow? You call that a manual? Like, what do you call that? And like, how are you documenting that?
I call it a manual. They just do it in Google Docs.
Yeah.
I build
step one, step two, step three. This is the.
All my processes are written out in kind of like a Visio or a Lucid chart, right? So it's a flow chart. And then from there, their manuals are kind of the back end of the flow chart. So when we look at the flow chart, say what happens here, their manual should let me know what happens there. They write it in their own words. They can navigate it in their own time. Like I don't care how they write the manual as long as it's correct in what we're trying to accomplish.
And as long as the outcome is what your KPI shows, right? And it might mean that it moves around a little bit different ways than what you originally did it. Or correct me if you're wrong, right? But you get to the same spot. Is that a fair summary, Pete? Or at what point do you say like, no, like the way you wrote that, the way you're doing that is still wasting time here. Like walk us through how much leeway do you give the team member?
Yeah. So in the very beginning, right, everything is escalated, right? So every time they do something, even if I let them go and I let them fly on their own, everything gets escalated to their manager. So the manager can check the work to make sure that they understand. And if they don't understand a certain part, great, we pause and we train on that part, right? The cool thing though, Brett, is this is what happened to me. So I had people take over a process. So I'll give you an example. I had Jessica. She took over the lease renewal process. I taught her the way I wanted it done. And over time, she got better at it than I did, obviously, because she was doing it all the time. And then she told me that she changed the process from 60 days out to 90 days out. And so I'm like, interesting. I said, well, can you tell me more? Like, why did you do that? She gave me all the right answers. Well, it was bottlenecking here. We need to do this. We need to get the owner. And next thing I know, I'm like, now think about this. I have a virtual team member making about $9 an hour in Mexico who's completely running my lease renewal and has so much ownership. She's changing things. Now, if it didn't work, I wouldn't have been mad. I want you to change things, try things. And if you think it's better for the business and it doesn't work out, no problem, right? We just go back to the way it was. But that is complete ownership. Now you have somebody who's completely bought into your business. And that, my friend, is when things hum. That's when you go from chaos to clarity right there.
Oh, I absolutely love it. We're talking with Pete Neubig at vpmsolutions.com. That's vpmsolutions.com. You got to check out his website. It's incredible. And it's talking about how a virtual assistant, executive assistant, can help you, your property management company can help you as an appointment setter, can help you in your leasing assistant. And so you've niche focused into the property management aspects. So people who own apartments or managing apartments or managing single family homes. Is it also extended to like commercial investment leasing, or we'll talk about that a little bit?
If you're an investor that owns a bunch of homes and you think you need a little bit of help, it helps with that. We focus on property management because we have some training videos that are free for the virtual team members to take and get certified on. But think of anything that's back office. If you're an insurance company and you need some accounting work or bookkeeping or marketing or SEO optimization or customer facing, answer phones, all of that works. The reason why we're more focused on property management, because that's my background. So I'm able to build job descriptions for you. I'm able to build training for you. So we have all that for free on our website, which makes things a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. You got some of the training, you got some of the turnkey, and then you got a chance to find maybe source some of the talent, right? Is that what you're saying? You're going to find and source
we have
talent?
over 15,000 people. If you scroll up here, right there, you have over 15,500 assistants waiting to take your business to the next level.
Excellent. And so, yeah, and someone could come in and create an account, find the person that they're looking for, and then click and hire them, and that gets paid, however it
Yeah.
gets paid. Yeah.
So the way it works is it's free for the company to use. So let's say, Brett, you wanted to hire a virtual team member to do some marketing for you.
Yeah.
You can create a free profile. You can search the 15,000 people. You can post a job. You can, we have a talent match that'll match your job with people on our platform. You can then reach out to them, schedule interviews, and you hire somebody.
Mhm.
When you hire somebody, you negotiate directly with them what the pay is.
Mhm.
This is key, because when you have placement companies, they tell you how much you're going to pay, and then they pay them a much smaller fee. So
Mm.
by going through our platform, it's called direct pay. So you're direct paying them, and if you negotiate $10 an hour, they're going to make $10 an hour minus 10%, which is how I make money.
Mhm.
We don't charge you, in this case, any money. There's a small processing fee that's passed on through you, but there are no platform fees. So no monthly fees, no fees to do anything.
Amazing. VPMsolutions.com. I can tell you, I have some virtual assistants, and it's literally changed my life. Like, I'm talking about traveling with my family, being able to do more deals, help more clients, all of the things that Pete is saying. You've got to get virtual assistants. You got to get it going right now. Don't wait. Cost of quality talent can be very expensive. And if you want to scale, even if you have great talent, like, there's a mix between US based and virtual based. I highly encourage you to check it out. That's what we have, and it's worked wonders. That being said, Pete, we ready to transition? We did promise we're going to talk and geek out a little bit about tax. You ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right. So, Pete, I'm in Taxifornia, right? And like, a lot of people struggle with capital gains tax when they go to sell these highly appreciated businesses or commercial real estate or the 1031 exchanges. And I'm curious for you, Pete, like, what have you found to be the biggest frustration when it comes to the 1031 exchange and or exiting like a business? You mentioned you exited a business and you had huge capital gains tax. Talk to us about those frustrations.
Yeah, so I could talk a lot about the frustration of selling a business that you put all your blood, sweat, and tears in, don't get a paycheck for many years, and you finally build it to a sellable asset. And for us, we sold, I'll give you kind of roundabout numbers. We sold for around $4.5 million, which I know is not a lot of money, but for me it was. It's like, so I got about 50% of that, and we got a 3-year payout. And I was very fortunate. I have a CPA that kind of connected me with people, but you just don't realize that how much tax you have to pay. And then you don't know the vehicles that you can utilize to protect yourself. So luckily I had a guy very similar to you, Brett, that was able to kind of guide me through it. But he's more defensive. So for example, we did a lot of opportunity zones. I don't know if that's a strategy that you recommend, but we did a lot of opportunity zones. And then there's a formula that you have to use, that you can't just put all your money in opportunity zones, right? You have to put only a percentage. And then there was this other thing I had to do. It was kind of a tax credit. I had to spend $95,000 to save some wetlands project. And because I did that, I got like 10-1 or something like that on my tax savings. So everything I did was really defense based. My business partner, what he did is he went offense based. And he had a different financial advisor, and they said, well, screw it. We're going to pay the taxes, but we're going to invest the money that we're going to make more money than if you pay taxes, which I think is a little risky because nothing is guaranteed in life. So I kind of like the defensive thing. But unfortunately, luckily, if it wasn't for my CPA, I would have no idea like about any of this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, that's so important to mention. Right? You want to have a team, you have a dream team, and you want to have a strategy that's going to solve your challenge. And certain people have different strategies and different outcomes. Part of what we specialize in, a thing called a deferred sales trust, where I like to say you can have your cake and eat it too. You can not only defer the tax, but you can also go back into other business ventures, other commercial real estate deals. Also, you can put it into the stock market and grow your wealth. You can be riskier with some, you can be less riskier with others. In other words, you can have liquidity, you can have diversification. And it's not a Delaware statutory trust for those that are listening, getting confused with the Delaware 1031. It's a deferred sales trust, and it works for crypto, business, real estate, primary homes. It can save a failing 1031 exchange. If anyone wants to learn more about this, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. You can download our free ebook, and it'll teach you the basics of how to implement this strategy. That being said, we're running out of time. Mr. Pete, are you ready for the lightning round?
I sure am. Just one thing: if you are thinking about selling your business, go see Brett and his team first, because like you need to know what to do prior to actually selling the business.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, because he doesn't have to be set up prior to. Appreciate the plug
Mhm.
there. So that being said, here's the lightning round. So Pete, if you could go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget you'd make sure to tell yourself to do?
Become an entrepreneur earlier.
Question number 2, what's the number one book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year?
Traction.
Question number 3, what are you most curious about right now?
Most curious about how my business is going to grow over the next 12 months because I'm not pulling a paycheck yet.
Question number 4, what's the number one leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
Do what you're saying or lead by example. I think lead by example.
Excellent. Last question. After all your success, selling the business you've helped or sold and helping the people you've helped, how do you stay focused on your core values, and how do you stay encouraged to charge forward to reach new goals?
Man, that's a really good one. I think for me, I just started another business. I don't know if I'll ever retire. So by starting a business, it kind of forces me to recreate and relook at my core values. Typically, my personal core values are imprinted on the business in some capacity. My leadership team will kind of help with that, but that's kind of it. And then I just love I love helping people. And I think by when you're a business owner, the people you employ, like Product Management was great for us because I employed a lot of people in many different countries. I then helped people live in a nice, a home, right? And then I also helped investors with some of their biggest investments, their properties. So it was like a triple win for me. With VPM, I love it because I get to help companies in the US and I get to help, I got over 300 people working right now in like 14 different countries. It's pretty amazing. And then I have a team members too. So that's how I'd say that's what drives me.
That's amazing, Pete. I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to keep encouraging you to use your gift of being a process king, a flow chart champion, and an automation freedom fighter,
Guru.
right? So I want to encourage you to keep using those gifts to help people grow their business, help people be employed, help people to have a lot of connection and teamwork and core values, all of the things. So Pete, if people want to get in touch with you, would you remind them one last time, what's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, well, you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook. It's Pete Newbig. Best way to get in touch with me though is just email me. I'm still old school that way. Pete@vpmsolutions.com. It's Pete@vpmsolutions.com.
By the way, Newbig is spelled Neubig, Neubig. Pete, thanks for being on the show. And also want to thank our listeners for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is an amazing way for you to exit, defer millions of tax, create and preserve more wealth, or help your clients, friends, and families do the same. Also, if you're listening on Expert CRE Secrets, all of the brokers out there, we appreciate you listening and all your support. If we can help you at all with any of what we just talked about, go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. And if you need or want, you should at this point, after Pete just talked, a virtual assistant expert, you can check out Mr. Pete again at vpmsolutions.com. That's vpmsolutions.com. Hey, please rate, review, subscribe. Please share this with someone who could support and encourage today.